Welcome to Brand Builders TV. Deep dive topics, tools and resources brought to you by global thought leaders from within the Brand Builders Club. This show gives you access to the strategies that you can use to move forward with ease and flow in every area of your life and business. In today's show, Scott digs deeper into the final 3 writing hacks that will help you to easily attract your dream customers. Learn it, model it, and get shit done. Let's go.
Hi there, and welcome to the 3rd and final episode on the Nasty 9. The 9 most common writing issues that undermine business copy or business writing. And that form the content of my writing skills program. I'm Scott Keys of The Writing Guy, helping professionals, entrepreneurs and business owners to write human and make a real connection with their reader through the written word and get the results they want from the words they write. So there's a little bit of a rhythm there, isn't there? The rise and fall of our beautiful English language. Get the results they want from the words they write. I do in my training talk about rhythm, but unfortunately we're not going to be talking about that today. So what are we going to address today? What we're covering are the final 3 issues in the Nasty 9. So in the 2 previous episodes we covered 1 to 6, which included things like weeing all over your reader, poor or non-existent planning, vague message or objective, poor structure, because structure is more important than language, through to things like writing concisely, curing waffle, wordiness and wind, a very common ailment. And today, what are we going to look at today? We're looking at 3 very important issues, and they are long sentences, passivitis, which is overuse of the passive voice, and lastly, the 9th issue is nounitis, which is the overuse of nouns, especially abstract ones. So let's have a look at the first one, which is long sentences. You know, why are long sentences part of the Nasty 9? Well, pretty obviously, if you're writing long sentences, writing full of long sentences is more taxing on your reader's brain. Because if you imagine that the longer a sentence, the more ideas and thoughts and concepts are going to be contained within that sentence, from the opening word to the final full stop. And what that means, the analogy that I use is a computer one, which is the longer a sentence, the more information in your reader's cache memory, the more memory is going to have to be the more demanding it is on the reader's cache memory in terms of holding a number of ideas until the reader gets to the full stop, where they can finally work out what your meaning was and what you intended to say. So what I'd like you to do, what I'll do is I'll read you, I need to look at my screen for this. I'm going to read you a very long sentence. It actually runs to 59 words. Just to remind you, if you like, how powerful and effective it can be to write short sentences. So read as follows. Long sentences are an issue because they usually contain multiple ideas. So they're more taxing on the reader's brain than short sentences, as you're forcing the reader to hold more ideas in their head till they get to the full stop and complete their understanding of your message. In computer terms, the reader is having to hold more bits in their cache memory. Whew, it's like, when you're running out of breath. And that's a 59-word sentence. Clearly much too long, much too taxing and demanding on the reader's brain. So here's the thing. What I'd like you to do, I want you to do a mini exercise. And I'd like you to open up a Word document, ideally a Word document. And I want you to find a longish paragraph, and I'd like you please to count the total number of words in that paragraph. And secondly, I'd like you to count the number of sentences in that paragraph. And I'd like you please to divide the total number of words by the total number of sentences, because that will give you a very useful number, which is your ASL, your average sentence length in words. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then we'll pick up again, and I'll share with you what the number actually should be. So just to recap the instruction, find a long meaty paragraph in a document of yours. Count the total number of words in that paragraph. Then count the total number of sentences and divide the total number of words by the number of sentences, because that will give you your ASL, your average sentence length in words. So I'm just going to give you another minute or so to do that. Just keeping an eye on the time. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a little bit of time to do that. Don't worry if you haven't been able to calculate it, but if you have, whatever your ASL number is, if it's above 20, that's too high, because as I said earlier, the higher our ASL, the harder we're making our reader work to get our meaning. If your number, the number that your ASL number is below 15, that's probably a bit too low, because the risk is you'll end up writing rather sort of childlike or childish. This is a large project. It will be based in Miami. We hope it will succeed. It will require many people. Do you know what I mean? That kind of choppy, staccato, simplistic style is really no good. So what point am I making here? Your ASL, and this is really ideally across the whole of your document, needs to be between 15 and 20 words. Now, I don't know whether you're aware, but there's a function in Microsoft Word, called the Readability Stats, that will calculate, they will not only score your readability, but will calculate for you your ASL. And obviously, ideally, what you want to do is you want to know what your ASL is, not just in a paragraph, but across the whole of the document you're working on. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time for me to go into the how to activate the readability stats. It's slightly involved, and we're very limited for time. But if you would like to know, then please message me. Message me here on Brand Builders TV, and I'll send you the instructions. But it's really, really useful. The Microsoft Readability Stats will calculate your ASL in a matter of moments for you. Okay, so what can we do? How else can I help you to improve your writing by writing shorter sentences? So I'm just scrolling through there are a number of ways of doing that, but one is to omit needless words, which I think I talked about in the previous episode, which is really how we write concisely. But one of the side effects of writing concisely is actually shorter sentences. So if you want to lower your ASL, then omit needless words and write concisely. What I would like to share with you, though, is another way of writing shorter sentences is to create new sentences out of which clauses. That sounds a bit kind of grammatical, I don't want you to kind of run screaming for the hills, because I'm about to explain what that means. What I mean by a which clause, also known as a relative or a subordinate clause, is so essentially in writing you have two clauses. You have the main clause, which is the part of the sentence that conveys your main message, and then you have a subordinate or relative clause which tends to give what I call additional but non-essential information. And let me give you an example. I'll read this out to you. It's really, really simple. It's just one sentence, and I will show you how to turn this one sentence into two. So it reads as follows. One project was delayed for more than 6 months while a new program manager was recruited, comma, which added $5 million to the budget. I mean, you know, let's face it, not an outrageously long sentence, but nonetheless, I want you to see how easy it is to turn one sentence into two. So what we could do then, and the technique is to basically find the which, the relative pronoun, which should be preceded by a comma, replace the comma with a full stop, and replace the word which with this. And what you end up is two sentences that read as follows. One project was delayed for more than 6 months while a new program manager was recruited, full stop. This added $5 million to the budget. Okay, two sentences. Yeah. So I'll just read that back to you. Two sentences. One project was delayed for more than 6 months while a new program manager was recruited, full stop. This added $5 million to the budget. You very quickly and easily turned one longish sentence into two. Okay. So let's look at the next issue. The next issue is passivitis. Passivitis, overuse of the passive voice. Why is this one of the nasty 9 issues? The passive voice, particularly when you include the subject, is longer, it's less direct, it's less active, you know, the clues in the name, and the passive voice typically makes the reader work harder to get your meaning. So let's take a very quick look at how we form the active and the passive voice. And by the way, just sort of keep this simple, the voice of a sentence is either active or passive. It can't be both. So it's binary. It's either one or t'other. Okay? So how do we form? Let's look first of all at how we form the active voice. What do we even mean by the active voice? So the example I give you is very simple. Sam wrote the memo. Sam is the subject because he or she is the writer. Wrote is obviously the verb, from the verb to write. And the memo is the object because that's what's being written. So what we've got there is known as a declarative sentence. So don't worry too much about the technical terminology. But the key thing to remember is that sentence goes subject, verb, object. And we describe that sentence as being in the active voice. And the beauty of the active voice is it forces you to state who is doing what to whom. But now there's kind of a myth going around in professional writing that you know, to be formal and to be professional, you have to use the passive voice. Well, to be honest with you, it's complete kind of BS. But let me show you anyway how we form the passive voice so that you know the difference. The passive version of that simple sentence would be, the memo was written by Sam. So what's happened is that the object, the memo, and the subject, Sam, have done this. They've switched places. They've switched places like this. So the passive version now reads, the memo was written by Sam. And you can already hear that it's longer. It's less direct. It's more kind of convoluted. In fact, it reminds me of a delegate in one of my workshops who slightly quirkily said that the passive voice was a bit like this. And then he did this. He said, it's a bit like scratching your left ear with your right arm. You know, normally you do it with your left hand, which was, I did warn you, slightly quirky, but I mean, at least physically, it really demonstrates what's going on. So anyway, the memos now is still the object. Sam is still the subject, but they swap places. And the verb to write has also changed form, as it's moved from wrote to written. And you'll notice as well the sentence has gained two new words. The auxiliary from the verb to be, was, as in the memo was written, and the preposition by, which you need in the passive voice to tell the reader who's taken the action. So the memo was written by Sam. Longer, less direct, less active, more passive, more convoluted. So my kind of, in a way, the obvious message here is I would urge 90% of your writing to be in the active voice, because the active voice forces you to state who is doing what to whom. However, and this is important, so I want to share this with you, there are 4 occasions where it serves us to use the passive voice. And let me just run through those very quickly with you. In no particular order. When we want to, number 1 is when we want to cover our backside, kind of CYA language, excuse my French, but cover your ass, when you're trying to cover your backside or be less direct or less confrontational. So a government spokesman may well say, we're very sorry, but mistakes have been made. Targets were missed, but lessons will be learnt. Classic backside covering language, isn't it? I mean, you can hear it. We don't know who made the mistakes. We don't know who missed the targets, nor do we know who will learn the lessons. So the passive voice is very useful if we want to hide responsibility or fudge accountability. Really important. Number 2 is when we want to emphasize the object. So in the example I just gave you, you might say, it was the handcrafted vellum printed memo that was written by Sam. We're emphasizing the object, not the subject. Scenario number 3 is when we simply don't know who the subject is, and we drop the subject. So we just say the memo was written, but we don't know who wrote it. Typically, in the commission of a crime, we'd use the passive voice. A murder was committed. We don't know who did that dreadful deed. Our friends were burgled last weekend. My car was keyed last night. A shot was fired. We simply don't know who did all those horrible things. So, it's when we don't know, the subject is unknown. And then the 4th and final scenario, where it serves us to use the passive voice, is where basically the subject is unimportant, doesn't matter. And the typical business example would be the meeting has been arranged for Tuesday. It doesn't really matter who arranged the meeting, does it? What matters is it's been arranged and it's happening on Tuesday. Other than those 4 scenarios, please write in the active voice. Subject, verb, object. I hope that's clear. Okay? What I'd like you to do, and we haven't got very long, but just spend no more than a minute seeing if you can identify any passive voice in your writing. Typically, it will be given away by the object coming first, so you need to identify the object, and the preposition by will be in there somewhere if you're including the subject in your sentence, as in the memo. Object was written, verb by Sam, subject. Yep. So just spend a minute or two. Don't worry too much if you can't find any, but just see if you can spot any passive voice in your writing. And by the way, let me just add as well, the other advantage of using the readability stats and by the way of spell checking your writing, which I'm assuming you're doing anyway, is that if you've set the spell check in the settings, if you've set the spell check settings to pick up the passive voice, then whenever you do a spell check, it should highlight or underline the instances of the passive voice. Yeah. So just see if you can identify any passives in your writing. And then we'll move on to the ninth and final issue, which is nounitis. So while you're doing that, let me just share with you a few more examples of the passive voice. In fact, what I'll do is I'll give you the active version first, and then you just orally, speaking to the camera, obviously I can't hear you, but just shout out to me what the passive version would be. The striker scored the goal. The striker is the subject, scored is the verb, and the goal is the object. The striker scored the goal. The passive version would be the goal was scored by the striker. Yeah. XYZ company undertook a study of the industry. XYZ company is the subject, undertook is the verb, and the study is the object. Subject, verb, object. The passive version would be the industry study was undertaken by XYZ Limited or PLC. I can't remember what sort of company I chose. We do need to move on, but I hope that's clear. Any problems with the passive voice? Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Sammy. The goal was scored by the striker. Exactly right. The goal is the object, was scored is the verb, and the striker is the subject. Yeah. Classic passive voice. Object, verb, subject. Okay, let's move on. Great, thanks. Here we go. Right, so issue number 9. And why is it in the programme? Nounitis. Coined by a fellow writing doctor called Rupert Morris in a very good book about writing, which he published in 1989, called The Right Way to Write. Nounitis is the overuse of nouns. And if I can just take you back to school for a moment, what's a noun? A noun, the simplest way of remembering what a noun is a naming word. So a person, a place, an object, or an idea. And the trouble with nouns is that they're longer and less vigorous than verbs. And they tend to, so nounitis is basically overuse of abstract nouns, nouns, particularly abstract nouns. And they clog up our writing. So let me give you a very simple example. They're also symptomatic of business jargon. I would like you to identify, please, for me, all the nouns in this sentence, very short sentence. And it goes as follows. Our specialism is the provision of health solutions. Just shout out to me or write in the comments. Identify all the words in that sentence that you think are nouns. And I'll read it back to you again. Our specialism is the provision of health solutions. So that little sentence is like it's suffering from really acute nounitis. Specialism, noun. Provision, noun. Health, noun. Solutions, noun. So it's just bogged down in abstract nouns. And writing that is bogged down basically loses its reader, and that's failure. The cure, which I've already sort of alluded to, is what? How do we cure nounitis? It's really, really simple. use more verbs than nouns. Because taking you back to school for a moment, if I can cast you all the way back, what is a verb? A verb is a word of action and doing. So if you want overnight to invigorate your writing, then use more verbs than nouns. And that's one of the 21 techniques in my Rhetorica toolkit. So let's do that now in this example. So version number 2, we would end up with something like, we specialize, verb, in providing, verb, health solutions. You know, you can't get away from the odd noun, so it's already more balanced. We specialize in providing, 2 verbs, health solutions, 2 nouns. So it's already more balanced. But there's a problem. And the problem is that one of those words in version 2 is a sow, a severely overused word. In fact, it's worse than a sow. It's a carrier for the Nownitis virus. Because every time you use this particular word, you have to follow it with a noun. And that word is provide. If I had $1 or a pound or a euro or a drachma or whatever currency you use, for every time I've had to strike the word provide out of some writing I've reviewed, I would be sunning myself in the Caribbean now rather than a rather autumnal Balham in southwest London. So to show you what I mean, we might say we provide guidance, we provide support, we provide advice. Just use the verb. We brief, we guide, we support, we advise. So in this little exercise, for the 3rd and final version, you're banned from using the word provide. What does that force you now to do? Well, you end up with what I think is a much more palatable version and more readable with vigour, and it reads as follows. We specialize in solving your, because it's good to personalize, as we've already spoken about in previous episodes, we specialize in solving your health needs, challenges, issues, concerns, problems, whatever word you want to use. So you're using 2 very powerful verbs, specialize and solve. You've personalized the sentence, and you've got 2 nouns because you can't divest your writing of every single noun. It just doesn't make sense. So just to share with you again, the final version, and I certainly know, well, what I'll do is I'll share with you the original version, and then I'll share with you the final version. And you decide what type of writing you would most like to read, and therefore write. So the first version is, our specialism is the provision of health solutions. Acute Nownitis. The 3rd and final version is, we specialize in solving your health problems, or your health issues, or your health challenges. I certainly know which version my money would be on. So that's how we cure Nownitis. And that really is, I guess we're sort of almost out of time. In fact, what I'd like to share with you one more thing on the subject of Nownitis. So hopefully by now you've got the principle. But now when you revisit your writing, how do you self-diagnose, to use the medical analogy? Continue it anyway. If your writing is full of words ending in shun, as in solution, or shun, S-I-O-N, as in provision, or ity, as in capability, or capacity, or is, as in analysis, or paralysis, or diagnosis, or ism, as in specialism, or ment, very common, as in judgment, or management, or words ending in ance, A-N-C-E, as in performance, or maintenance, or words ending in al. Can you think of any nouns ending in al? Can you think of any nouns ending in al? This usually does trip people up in my training. Proposal, referral, Yeah, those are the two obvious ones. I'm sure you could come up with more, but yeah, so nouns ending in AL. Nouns ending in AGE, damage, appendage, wastage, and then finally nouns ending in ACY, piracy, bureaucracy, advocacy. If you have lots of nouns ending or lots of words ending in with those endings, chances are you're suffering from really acute nownitis. Take your writer's scalpel and lop off those endings to get back to the root verb. Because you know what? There's a double whammy benefit here. By using more verbs and nouns, not only do you invigorate your writing, but you make it briefer as well and shorter. Because the verb is always shorter than its noun equivalent. Manage is shorter than management, isn't it? Perform is shorter than performance. Waste is shorter than wastage. So verbs really are the way to go. Yeah. So what I'd like to do, I think we're out of time. We've covered all 9. What I'm actually going to do is let me just recap very briefly. And I'm going to do this read from my screen just to make sure I capture them all. Hope you don't mind. What I'm going to do is just go through them very quickly again. So these are the nasty 9 that my online program covers and that we've covered in all 3 episodes. Number 1, weeing all over your reader. Number 2, poor or non-existent planning. Number 3, vague message or objective. Number 4, poor structure. You know, if you watch that episode, you'll remember that I said the structure is more important than language. Because no matter how beautifully you write, if it just doesn't hang together and you're sending your reader from pillar to post, you know, they're going to get their Helen with you, aren't they? And they're going to go. You'll lose your reader. Nasty issue number 5 is needlessly formal language, a great big fat myth that professional writing must be formal. That's one of the biggest myths around. Nasty issue number 6, waffle, wordiness and wind. We write concisely by omitting needless words. Number 7 is long sentences. You need to make sure your ASL, average sentence length, is between 15 and 20 words. Nasty issue number 8, passivitis. Spend 90% of your time, of your writing time, in the active voice, subject, verb, object. And then last but by no means least, cure your nownitis by using more verbs than nouns. You will invigorate your writing and you will also make it shorter and briefer. So that's it from me. Sorry if it's been a bit of a canter. My heart is beating. Sorry if it's been a bit, well, I'm glad it's beating anyway. Sorry if it's been a bit of a canter, but I really hope that's been useful. Any questions or comments or feedback, or if you'd like to know more, then please message me through Brand Builders TV. But good luck with your writing. Remember that the English language is a wonderful gift. I've had a love affair with it all my life and hope to until the day I die. But all the best and good luck with your writing. Bye now.
I hope that you've enjoyed the show today as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. If you've got anything out of this episode, please do tell someone else how they can subscribe to the Brand Builders TV channel at youtube.com/brandbuilderstv. Why not join us at our next Brand Builders Thinkubator, a global mastermind that we run every week to take away the loneliness of being in business on your own. For more information and to book your place, visit light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. That's light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. Until next time, be the ripple that you wish to see in the world, and we'll see you soon.